Hi guys, tonight we're going to explore a fascinating question. What would actually happen if dinosaurs came back to life and had to survive in our modern world? And I'm not talking about movie magic, I mean the real, brutal science of how these ancient creatures would fare on today's Earth. If you're enjoying these sleep stories that dive deep into wild scientific scenarios, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and drop a comment letting me know what time it is where you are and where you're listening from. I always love hearing from you night owls around the world. Alright, let's begin. Picture a piece of amber sitting in a Montana museum containing a mosquito that died 90 million years ago. The amber sits behind glass in a museum in Montana, a golden droplet frozen in time containing a single mosquito that died 90 million years ago. Visitors press close, excited by the possibility the insect once fed on dinosaur blood, that somewhere in its desiccated remains might be fragments of DNA from creatures that vanished 66 million years ago. The fantasy is irresistible. Popularized by films and novels, the idea that we could somehow extract that ancient genetic code, fill in the gaps, and resurrect beings that walked when the world was unrecognizably different. But strip away the Hollywood magic and ask the question seriously. What would actually happen if dinosaurs returned to our modern world? Not through cloning or genetic engineering, which faces insurmountable technical barriers, but through some mechanism that brings them back fully formed, alive and breathing. The answer reveals as much about our current world as it does about the Mesozoic era, and the implications are far stranger and more troubling than any movie has dared to imagine. Begin with the most fundamental problem. They would be stepping into an alien planet. The Earth of the late Cretaceous period, the final chapter of the dinosaur age ending 66 million years ago, bore only superficial resemblance to our modern world. Atmospheric oxygen levels stood at approximately 30% compared to today's 21%. That 9% difference might seem modest, but it had profound effects on metabolism, fire ecology, and the maximum size of terrestrial organisms. Higher oxygen concentration meant more efficient respiration, allowing creatures to grow larger without their internal systems failing under their own mass. It's one reason why insects during the even earlier Carboniferous period could reach enormous sizes, with dragonflies sporting wingspans up to 65 centimeters, nearly 3 times larger than any modern dragonfly. The temperature differential was even more dramatic. During the late Cretaceous, global average temperatures range from 22 to 28 degrees Celsius, compared to our current 15 degrees Celsius. That means the Mesozoic world was 7 to 13 degrees warmer on average. There were no polar ice caps. Antarctica hosted lush forests of ferns, conifers, and primitive flowering plants, with summer temperatures reaching around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, even at latitudes above 80 degrees south. The Arctic Circle saw similar conditions. Fossils of crocodilians and turtles have been found in rocks from northern Alaska, indicating that even winter temperatures remained above freezing across much of the polar regions. This warmth was distributed differently than in our modern climate. The equator to pole temperature gradient was much shallower. Tropical regions were only slightly warmer than today, perhaps by 2 to 3 degrees, but polar regions were 20 to 30 degrees warmer. This meant that dinosaurs living at high latitudes experienced conditions that have no modern analogue. They endured months of continuous winter darkness, just as modern Arctic species do, but they did so in temperatures that remained relatively mild, with forests that stayed green year-round instead of the tundra that exists there now. Now imagine a Tyrannosaurus rex, an adult female measuring 12.8 meters long and weighing approximately 8,000 kilograms, suddenly appearing in modern Montana. She materializes in late October when temperatures are already dropping toward freezing at night. Her massive body, evolved for a world where nighttime temperatures rarely fell below 10 degrees Celsius, even at this latitude, immediately begins struggling with heat loss. Large animals have a lower surface area to volume ratio than small animals, which generally helps them retain heat. An elephant, for instance, actually has problems with overheating rather than cold. But a Tyrannosaurus evolved without the need for the extreme insulation that modern cold-adapted large mammals possess. She has no fur, no thick layer of blubber like walruses that can be 18 centimeters thick. Some tyrannosaurs may have had primitive feathering, especially as juveniles, based on related species from China, where feathered tyrannosaur fossils have been discovered. But an adult Tyrannosaurus, if it had any feather covering at all, likely had sparse hair-like filaments rather than the dense plumage that insulates modern birds. Her scales, while providing some insulation, are nowhere near sufficient for a Montana winter where temperatures can plummet to minus 35 degrees Celsius. Within hours, she's experiencing hypothermia. Her metabolic rate, which has been debated for decades among paleontologists, becomes critically relevant. If she was fully warm-blooded like modern mammals, she needs to consume approximately 150 kilograms of meat per day to maintain her body temperature and activity level, based on calculations of her muscle mass and energy requirements. If she was more like a modern Komodo dragon with an intermediate metabolism somewhere between cold-blooded reptiles and warm-blooded mammals, she might need only 40 to 60 kilograms daily. Either way, she needs to hunt, and she needs to hunt immediately. But what does she hunt? Her eyes, positioned forward on her skull, providing binocular vision with depth perception, superior to modern hawks, scan a landscape that makes no sense. The vegetation is wrong. She's looking at ponderosa pines, Douglas firs, and grasslands. Grass didn't exist in her time. It only evolved around 55 million years ago, 10 million years after her kind vanished. The flowering plants that do exist are far more diverse and advanced than anything she knew. The Cretaceous had early flowering plants, angiosperms that first appeared around 130 million years ago, but they were primitive compared to the modern varieties that now dominate every ecosystem. The animals are equally alien. She spots movement and her predatory instincts surge. A white-tailed deer, a buck weighing approximately 140 kilograms, freezes as the massive predator focuses on him. Her vision is extraordinarily acute, with eyes roughly 30 centimeters in circumference, the largest of any terrestrial animal from her era. She can detect movement at ranges exceeding 6 kilometers in good conditions. But as she moves to pursue, problems immediately emerge. Her legs, while powerful enough to propel 8,000 kilograms at speeds potentially reaching 27 kilometers per hour, according to recent biomechanical analyses, are built for the firmer ground of the Cretaceous. Modern Montana soil, rich with grass roots forming a dense mat, has different structural properties than the fern and conifer-dominated ground she evolved to run on. Her footfalls, exerting pressure of approximately 500 kilopascals per square centimetre through her three-toed feet, sink deeper than expected. The deer, meanwhile, is fast, capable of speeds up to 48 kilometers per hour, and far more agile in this environment. It vanishes into forest that the Tyrannosaurus finds unnaturally dense. The understory vegetation, thick with shrubs and small trees that evolved in ecosystems shaped by browsing mammals, impedes her in ways the more open Cretaceous forests did not. She's hungry, stressed, and increasingly cold as the sun sets and temperatures drop toward freezing. Her difficulty regulating temperature becomes acute. If she's warm-blooded, she's burning through her energy reserves rapidly with no food intake to replenish them. If she has an intermediate metabolism, she's entering a torpor she cannot afford, her reaction times slowing, her ability to hunt diminishing. By the third day, she's desperate enough to try scavenging. Her sense of smell, always excellent with olfactory bulbs proportionally larger than those of any other theropod dinosaur, leads her toward a ranch where cattle graze. The cattle, domesticated Bos taurus descended from aurochs first domesticated around 10,000 years ago, have never encountered a predator like this. Their instinctive fear of large predators exists, but it's calibrated for wolves that weigh at most 80 kilograms and mountain lions that average 65 kilograms. This creature weighs more than 100 cattle combined. The herd panics, scattering in all directions. She successfully brings down a cow weighing approximately 700 kilograms. Her jaws capable of exerting an estimated 35,000 newtons of bite force, the strongest of any terrestrial animal ever measured, easily crushing bones. But this brings new problems. Within hours, ranch hands discover the kill site. Within a day, state wildlife officials arrive, then federal authorities, then military units. A living dinosaur confirmed through DNA analysis that shows no modern genetic contamination represents a scientific impossibility, a biological miracle, and a potentially lethal threat to human populations. The decision tree branches rapidly. Attempts to tranquilize her using drugs calibrated for elephants, the largest modern land animals at approximately 6,000 kilograms for an adult male African elephant, have unpredictable effects. Her biochemistry is fundamentally different. Her liver enzymes, kidney function, and neurological receptors evolved in a completely different context. If the tranquilizers work, she's captured and transported to a secure facility where the real challenges begin. She needs a controlled climate maintaining temperatures above 20 degrees Celsius constantly. She needs approximately 150 kilograms of fresh meat daily, which means roughly 55,000 kilograms annually, equivalent to 78 adult cows. She needs space, a territory that for an apex predator of her size would naturally span approximately 100 square kilometers, based on predator-to-prey ratios observed in modern ecosystems. She needs enrichment, challenges, stimulation, things to hunt, or at least simulate hunting behavior, because a bored Tyrannosaurus is a stressed Tyrannosaurus, and stress in an 8,000 kilogram predator is dangerous to everyone nearby. Now multiply this scenario. What if it's not one Tyrannosaurus but a breeding population, say 50 individuals? What if multiple species return simultaneously? A herd of 20 Triceratops, each weighing approximately 6,000 to 12,000 kilograms, appears in grasslands that cannot support their dietary needs. Triceratops was a mega herbivore that likely consumed 200 to 300 kilograms of vegetation daily, similar to modern elephants but with different nutritional requirements. They evolved eating ferns, cycads, and conifers. Modern grasses have high silica content that wears down teeth differently than the plants they evolved to process. Their dental batteries, containing up to 800 teeth that continuously replace themselves throughout their lives, are optimized for vegetation that barely exists anymore outside of select ecosystems. A herd of 20 Triceratops consuming 5,000 kilograms of vegetation daily would strip an area bare within weeks. They'd be forced to migrate, wandering across agricultural lands through suburbs causing havoc. Each Triceratops represents a moving vehicle weighing as much as a pickup truck, with 3 horns, the longest extending up to 1 meter, and a frill that serves as both a defense mechanism and a social display. Frightened by cars, airplanes, sounds, and sights they have no context for, they become unpredictable and dangerous. Or consider the aerial dimension. A flock of Quetzalcoatlus, the largest known flying animal with a wingspan of approximately 10 to 11 meters and an estimated mass of 200-250 kilograms, returns to the skies. These were Azhdarchid pterosaurs, not dinosaurs technically, but contemporaries that dominated Cretaceous skies. Their flight mechanics remain debated, but they likely used a combination of soaring and occasional powered flight, taking advantage of thermal updrafts just as modern condors and albatrosses do. But modern air is thinner in terms of oxygen content. The atmospheric pressure is the same, approximately 101 kilopascals at sea level, but that air contains 21% oxygen instead of 30%. This means each breath delivers about 30% less oxygen to their systems. Their flight muscles, their cardiovascular systems, their entire aerobic capacity is compromised. They might manage short flights at low altitudes, but sustained soaring at the altitudes they evolved for becomes exhausting or impossible. Worse, they now share the skies with human aircraft. A commercial jet cruising at 10,000 meters altitude, traveling at approximately 900 kilometers per hour, is essentially invisible to them until collision is imminent. A Quetzalcoatlus weighing 220 kilograms striking an aircraft at cruise speed would impact with kinetic energy comparable to a bird strike but with far more mass. Modern aircraft are tested against bird strikes of up to 4 kilograms at high speeds. Something 55 times heavier could be catastrophic. Air travel near any region inhabited by large pterosaurs would become extremely hazardous. The ecological disruption extends far beyond individual species. Dinosaurs evolved in ecosystems with completely different competitive dynamics. The Cretaceous had no large mammalian predators or herbivores. Mammals existed but were mostly small, the largest being perhaps 15 kilograms, roughly the size of a badger. They filled niches as insectivores, scavengers, and small omnivores. The absence of large mammals meant ecological space that dinosaurs filled without competition. Modern ecosystems have no such space. Every niche is occupied. A Deinonychus pack, 6 individuals each weighing approximately 73 kilograms, with their characteristic sickle claw on the second toe measuring 12 centimeters long, would be competing directly with wolves, cougars, and in some regions bears. These modern predators have advantages. Wolves hunt in sophisticated, coordinated packs with complex communication. They've evolved in ecosystems with prey that have evolved specifically to evade mammalian predators. Deer have early warning systems tuned to detect canine scent and behavior patterns. The Deinonychus pack, while formidable with their speed potentially reaching 60 kilometers per hour and their pack hunting behavior, face prey that have different escape strategies than what they evolved to counter. They also face direct competition for kills. A grizzly bear weighing 360 kilograms could easily drive a Deinonychus pack off a kill. Modern predators and dinosaur predators competing for the same resources would lead to direct conflicts where one side must lose, and that side would likely be the dinosaurs, unfamiliar with modern species, modern diseases, modern ecosystems. Disease represents perhaps the most severe threat. Dinosaurs have no immunity to modern pathogens. Their immune systems evolved to combat Cretaceous bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Modern pathogens have had 66 million years of evolution since the dinosaurs vanished. Avian influenza, for instance, evolved in modern birds. which are themselves descended from theropod dinosaurs but represent a lineage that has undergone tremendous immunological evolution. A virus that causes mild symptoms in chickens could be lethal to a dinosaur whose immune system has never encountered anything similar. Bacterial infections would be equally problematic. Modern soil bacteria have evolved in the presence of antibiotics, both natural ones produced by fungi and other organisms, and synthetic ones created by humans over the past century. Many modern bacteria possess resistance mechanisms that didn't exist in the Cretaceous. A simple wound that breaks a dinosaur's skin could introduce bacteria that their immune system cannot effectively combat. Sepsis from what would have been a minor injury in their own time could quickly become fatal. The reverse is equally concerning. Dinosaurs would carry their own microbiomes, populations of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that lived in and on them. Some Cretaceous bacteria, frozen in amber or permafrost, have been successfully revived by scientists in laboratory conditions. These ancient microorganisms exposed to modern ecosystems could potentially cause problems for modern species that have no evolutionary history with them. The likelihood of a Cretaceous pathogen jumping to modern animals and causing an epidemic is probably low, but with dozens or hundreds of dinosaurs interacting with modern ecosystems, the probability becomes non-negligible. Consider the human response beyond the immediate crisis management. Dinosaurs returning would trigger massive economic disruption. Insurance industries would face unprecedented claims for livestock losses, property damage, and human casualties. Agriculture in affected regions would become nearly impossible. How do you protect a wheat field from a migrating herd of Parasaurolophus, duck-billed dinosaurs weighing approximately 3,000 kilograms each, that have no concept of property boundaries and are simply following their instincts to find suitable feeding grounds? Tourism would boom initially. Millions of people would pay enormous sums for the chance to see living dinosaurs. Estimates based on modern wildlife tourism suggest that regions hosting dinosaur populations could see tourist revenue increases of 500 to 1,000% in the first year. Safari operations in Africa, currently generating approximately $12 billion annually across the continent, would provide a rough model. But dinosaur tourism would be far more dangerous and far more tightly controlled, requiring infrastructure investments in the tens of billions of dollars for proper observation facilities, security measures, and emergency response systems. Real estate values would collapse in affected regions. Who wants to live in an area where a Tyrannosaurus might wander through the neighborhood, where pteranodons with wingspans of 7 meters might nest on rooftops, or where herds of ankylosaurs, armored dinosaurs weighing 5,000 kilograms with tail clubs that could swing with enough force to shatter bones, might mistake your car for a threat and attack it? Communities would demand government intervention, protective barriers, relocation assistance, compensation for losses. The military response would evolve rapidly. Initial containment efforts would focus on non-lethal methods, tranquilizers and barriers, because these animals represent unprecedented scientific value. But if dinosaurs began appearing in significant numbers, if containment failed, if human casualties mounted, the calculus would shift toward elimination. A single Apache helicopter with Hellfire missiles could neutralize even the largest dinosaurs from beyond their perceptual range. Modern military technology so vastly outmatches biological threats that the dinosaurs would have no chance in direct confrontation. But there's something deeply tragic about that scenario. These creatures, through no fault of their own, would be thrust into a world they're not equipped to survive in, and then destroyed when they inevitably cause problems. They'd be refugees from deep time, biological anachronisms whose very existence creates crises. The ethical debates would be fierce. Do we have an obligation to preserve them as living fossils, remnants of evolutionary history? Or do we have a greater obligation to protect modern ecosystems and human populations from the disruption they cause? Scientists would push aggressively for preservation. The knowledge that could be gained from studying living dinosaurs would revolutionize paleontology, biology, and our understanding of evolution. We could finally settle decades-long debates. Were they warm-blooded or cold-blooded? Recent evidence suggests most were likely somewhere in between, with metabolic rates roughly 2 to 3 times higher than modern reptiles, but lower than modern mammals. Living specimens would provide definitive answers. We could study their behavior, their vocalizations, their parenting strategies, their social structures. We could analyze their biomechanics in ways impossible with fossils alone. The genetic information would be equally valuable. Dinosaur DNA could provide insights into evolutionary transitions, help us understand how modern birds evolved from theropod ancestors, reveal genetic mechanisms for gigantism, show adaptations for different climates and diets. The medical applications alone could be worth billions. If dinosaurs possessed unique immune system features, or healing capabilities or cancer resistance mechanisms, understanding those at a molecular level could lead to breakthroughs in human medicine. But preservation comes with enormous costs and risks. Building and maintaining facilities capable of housing dinosaurs safely would require funding comparable to large-scale infrastructure projects. A single secure enclosure for a Tyrannosaurus, built to prevent escape while providing adequate space and environmental controls, might cost $50 to $100 million. Multiply that across multiple species, multiple individuals, account for veterinary care from specialists who are inventing dinosaur medicine as they go along, and you're looking at annual costs in the billions. There's also the question of breeding. If we manage to keep dinosaurs alive, do we allow them to reproduce? A breeding population of any species needs genetic diversity to avoid inbreeding depression. For a large animal like Tyrannosaurus, a minimum viable population is typically considered to be around 500 individuals with sufficient genetic variation. Housing 500 Tyrannosaurus rex, each needing approximately 150 kilograms of meat daily, means providing 75,000 kilograms of food every single day, equivalent to roughly 107 adult cows. That's 39,000 cows annually just for food, not counting the space requirements, the climate control, the staffing, the medical care. The alternative is to keep small numbers in captivity purely for study, preventing reproduction, essentially maintaining living museums of extinct species. But that feels hollow, keeping magnificent creatures in glorified prisons because we cannot provide what they truly need, a world that no longer exists. They would be the loneliest animals on Earth, members of species that have no future, no ecosystem to return to, no possibility of living as evolution designed them to live. Now consider a more optimistic scenario. What if we could create refuge zones, large protected areas where dinosaurs could live in semi-wild conditions? The logistics are staggering, but not impossible. Take an area like the Great Basin Desert in Nevada, approximately 550,000 square kilometers of relatively low human population density. Fence it extensively, monitor it constantly, stock it with appropriate vegetation. For herbivorous dinosaurs that ate conifers and ferns, you'd need to plant millions of trees and wait decades for them to mature. You'd need to modify the climate within the enclosure, creating warmer, more humid conditions than naturally occur. Even if you overcome these challenges, you're creating an artificial ecosystem that will require constant management. Predator-prey ratios need to be maintained. In natural ecosystems, there's typically about one large predator for every 100 to 200 prey animals by biomass. Too many predators and they'll exhaust the prey population. Too few and the herbivores will overpopulate and strip all vegetation. Someone needs to be constantly monitoring populations, potentially culling excess animals, introducing new genetic diversity, managing disease outbreaks, and you're still left with a fundamental problem. These are Cretaceous animals in an Anthropocene world. The Anthropocene, our current geological epoch defined by human impact on global ecosystems, has atmospheric carbon dioxide levels of over 4,120 parts per million, and rising, up from approximately 1,000 parts per million in the Cretaceous. The temperature differential we discussed earlier means that even in a warmed refuge zone, you're not replicating Cretaceous conditions, just approximating them. The plants are wrong, the seasonal patterns are wrong, the length of days at different latitudes is slightly different, due to changes in Earth's axial tilt over millions of years. The dinosaurs would survive perhaps, but they wouldn't thrive. They'd be living fossils in the most literal sense, creatures preserved artificially in a world that has moved on without them. And what happens if climate change continues warming the planet? If global temperatures rise another 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, as projected under current emissions trajectories, some regions will become uninhabitable for humans. Do those regions become accidental dinosaur habitat? Do we cede parts of the planet to creatures from the past while we struggle to adapt to changes we created? There's a deeper question lurking beneath all of this. Why do we even want dinosaurs back? The fantasy appeals to something primal in us, a desire to witness power and grandeur that modern animals rarely provide. A Tyrannosaurus rex is viscerally exciting in a way that a lion, impressive as it is, simply isn't. The size differential alone is staggering. The largest lion might weigh 250 kilograms. A Tyrannosaurus weighs 32 times more. It's not just bigger, it's operating on a completely different scale. But that excitement, that desire to see and experience these creatures, comes at a cost to them. We'd be satisfying our curiosity and wonder by forcing animals into existence in a world where they cannot properly live. It's the ultimate form of selfishness, creating life for our entertainment and edification without regard for the welfare of the beings we create. We do this already with domesticated animals, breeding dogs into shapes that cause chronic health problems, keeping orcas in tanks where they cannot exhibit natural behaviors, maintaining zoo animals in enclosures that are luxurious by human standards but impoverished compared to their natural ranges. Dinosaurs would be this exploitation magnified. We couldn't give them anything approaching a natural life. We couldn't let them hunt natural prey in natural ecosystems, because that would disrupt those ecosystems. We couldn't let them roam freely because they'd come into conflict with humans. We couldn't even provide appropriate climates without massive artificial intervention. They'd exist solely for our benefit, living monuments to our technological capability and our hubris. Perhaps the most telling aspect of the dinosaur resurrection fantasy is what it reveals about our relationship with extinction. We're currently driving species extinct at rates that rival the great mass extinctions of the geological past. Estimates suggest we're losing species at rates approximately 1,000 times faster than the natural background rate, with current extinction rates around 100 to 1,000 species per million species per year. By the end of this century, we could lose 20 to 50% of all currently existing species if trends continue. Yet we fantasize about bringing back species from deep time, while allowing modern species to vanish. We spend billions on movies about resurrected dinosaurs, while spending comparatively little on protecting rhinoceroses, elephants, tigers, species that are disappearing right now due to human actions. There are fewer than 4,000 tigers left in the wild, down from approximately 100,000 a century ago. Sumatran rhinoceroses number fewer than 80 individuals. Vaquita porpoises are down to approximately 10 individuals in the Gulf of California. These are creatures that belong to our current ecosystems, that play vital roles in their habitats, that have evolutionary potential, and could recover if we provided protection and space. Instead, we let them slide toward oblivion while dreaming of velociraptors. The irony is painful. We're so captivated by vanished megafauna that we ignore the megafauna dying around us. We mourn the loss of dinosaurs 66 million years after they disappeared while actively causing extinctions today. If dinosaurs did somehow return, they would serve as mirrors, reflecting our own precarious relationship with the planet. They would show us how quickly a dominant group can vanish when conditions change. They ruled for approximately 135 million years, if you count from the first definitive dinosaurs in the Triassic to the end Cretaceous extinction. That's an extraordinarily successful run by any measure. Humans, anatomically modern Homo sapiens, have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Our industrial civilization is barely 300 years old. We're newcomers who have achieved tremendous power in an evolutionary instant. The dinosaurs' extinction was not their fault. An asteroid 10 kilometers in diameter struck the Earth with no warning that they could perceive or respond to. The impact released energy equivalent to approximately 10 billion Hiroshima bombs, around 400 million times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, which had a yield of 15 kilotons of TNT. The immediate effects killed everything within hundreds of kilometers. The global effects, the darkness from debris blocking sunlight for months or years, the collapse of photosynthesis and thus food chains, the acid rain, the prolonged cooling, killed the rest over a period of years to decades. It was bad luck, cosmic catastrophe, the kind of event that happens occasionally on geological timescales, but appears with no pattern or warning on timescales relevant to living creatures. But our current crisis is different. We see it coming. We understand the mechanisms. We know that atmospheric carbon dioxide above 450 parts per million pushes us toward dangerous climate feedback loops. We know that habitat destruction drives extinctions. We know that overfishing collapses marine ecosystems. We know plastic pollution accumulates in every environment, including our own bodies. We know all of this, yet we struggle to change course. If dinosaurs returned and found themselves unable to adapt to modern conditions, unable to survive in a world so different from the one they evolved for, they'd be experiencing what countless modern species are experiencing right now. The difference is that modern species are failing to adapt to changes we caused, changes happening at speeds far faster than evolution can typically respond to. Climate zones are shifting poleward at rates of approximately 17 kilometers per decade. Species need to move their ranges at that same speed to stay within their optimal temperature ranges. Some can, some cannot. Those that cannot face extinction. The dinosaurs returning would be the ultimate invasive species, organisms introduced into ecosystems where they don't belong and cannot integrate successfully. We're already dealing with the consequences of invasive species worldwide. Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades, numbering potentially over 100,000 individuals, have decimated native mammal populations, with some species declining by 90 to 99% in areas where pythons are established. Zebra mussels in the Great Lakes, first detected in 1988, now number in the trillions and have caused billions of dollars in economic damage while fundamentally altering the ecosystem. But invasive species at least evolved in modern ecosystems, even if different regions. They're playing by roughly the same rules as native species, just with advantages that come from leaving their natural predators and diseases behind. Dinosaurs wouldn't even have that much. They'd be playing a game with rules that change completely while they were absent. The only way they could possibly succeed is if we created artificial conditions supporting them, and maintaining those conditions indefinitely would require resources and commitment that seem unlikely given how poorly we're managing current conservation challenges. In the end, the dinosaurs are better off extinct. That sounds harsh, perhaps even tragic, but it's true. They lived in their time, filled their ecological roles, and when conditions changed catastrophically, they yielded to new forms. Their descendants, the birds, survived and diversified into approximately 10,000 species that thrive in nearly every environment on Earth, from emperor penguins in Antarctica to peregrine falcons reaching speeds of 320 kilometers per hour in hunting dives, to hummingbirds beating their wings up to 80 times per second while hovering. The birds represent evolution's solution to the end Cretaceous catastrophe. Small body size meant lower food requirements. Flight provided access to new niches and the ability to migrate rapidly when conditions changed. Diverse diets, from nectar to carrion, from fish to seeds, meant not being dependent on any single food source. These are the dinosaurs that made it, that proved adaptable enough to survive multiple ice ages, the rise of mammalian competitors, and now the Anthropocene. If the non-avian dinosaurs somehow returned, they wouldn't be coming home. They'd be arriving in a foreign land where everything from the air to the plants to the length of the seasons has changed. We could perhaps keep a few alive in captivity, study them, learn from them, but we couldn't give them their world back because that world is gone, erased by 66 million years of continental drift, climate change, evolution, and ultimately by us, the species that now dominates in ways the dinosaurs, for all their size and power, never did. The fascination with bringing them back is really about us, about our desire to control nature, to reverse time, to witness wonders. But some doors, once closed, cannot be reopened without creating more harm than wonder. The dinosaurs had their age, an age so long and successful that it dwarfs our own brief moment. Perhaps the best way to honour them is not to resurrect them into a world they cannot inhabit, but to learn from their long reign and their sudden ending. They teach us that dominance is temporary, that conditions can change catastrophically, and that the planet endures and evolves with or without any particular group of inhabitants, no matter how successful they once seemed or how permanent their rule appeared.